Hi guys, Laura here from Hedgehog's Homestead. Today I am going to go ahead and trim all my tomatoes back. It is getting hot and it is going to be, this is our hot season here in Tennessee. The temperatures have been in the high 90s. Yesterday it was 100. And so we are going to go ahead and thin out our tomato plants, make sure that there's no suckers on, and then I'm also going to go through my cucumbers and cut off any dead leaves. I'm going to go through my peppers and take any diseased leaves off of all these plants out here. I thought I'd take you along and show you how I do this. Now, this is what a sucker looks like. Here's a branch of the, well, let me see. Here's a sucker right here. A sucker is something that comes in between the main stem. Here's the main stem. And then we have a leaf branch coming off here. And in between the leaf branch, we have a sucker. And that sucker happens to have a flower on it. But I don't want, well, see how quickly that came off? Suckers come off really quickly and easy to come off. I do have some dead leaves on this plant and some plants that are leaves that are really yellowing. So I'm just going to trim those off, and that's from the water splattering up. But it looks like we also have some disease here. So I don't want those touching the other leaves, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of those. Now, after I trim, and before I trim, I usually wash my clippers here. I'm not going to take off that whole branch because it actually has tomatoes on it. So I'm cutting this way back, and we'll just cut this whole thing off here. Okay. And I am not going to throw these diseased leaves in my compost at all. In fact, you probably don't want to put anything that is from your tomato plant in compost. So anything that's yellowing, I'm taking off, because that's just going to spread to the rest of the plant. And when I'm doing this, I'm thinning out the plant so that it doesn't get more disease. So it can breathe around the plant a little more, and that's good here in this Tennessee heat. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and now look for more suckers. Here's a sucker here. And take that sucker off of there. And that just helps the plant breathe a little more. It makes it easier for it to grow, and it makes it easier for it to concentrate on the tomatoes that are actually on the plant already. And then whenever I touch my tomato plants, touch them a lot. Because what happens is when you're moving your tomato plants around like this, tomato plants will put on more tomatoes just by shaking the plant. They do not need a bee or anything like that to propagate or to get more tomatoes on. So give it a good shake. That's why they're great for high tunnels. Later on this evening, I'm going to come back and get these tomatoes off of here that are nice and red, as you can see there. Because I watered this morning, I don't want to take those off while they have soaked up all that water. I want them to build up their sugars in the heat, and then they taste better. Now this tomato plant, it has been struggling since day one. It is doing a little better. I repotted it. It was all purple underneath. I fed it. I can leave a link to that video below. But it still struggles. It's doing better than it was. I'm not going to get rid of it because it is putting on a few tomatoes. It's a good example plant for you. There's a sucker there, as you can see the main stem here, and then in between the two is just a little sucker. And I take those off because I don't want these plants to bush up too much. I want them to, here's another little sucker in between here, if you can see this. Right in between here, just a little sucker in between this. Take that off with my fingers. Here's a big sucker here in between these two. Take that off with my clippers. And I'm thinning out the plant so that it will grow stronger. And so it doesn't die on us. Taking off the dead stuff. So that it's not focusing on trying to heal the dead stuff. It's focusing on growing these tomatoes strong. Because it will focus on trying to heal the dead stuff on here. So we fix that by cutting it off. And there we go. It's nicely thinned out. The air can get through it now, and it will be a healthier plant. There's another sucker and another bad leaf. So now it can concentrate its energy on the tomatoes that it's putting on. Now those tomato plants I got at an Amish store, and that's why I think they struggled, because they weren't in good soil. These tomato plants, I started out in my own kind of soil mix. I'm going to leave my playlist for my organic garden here, and you can see what kind of mixture I put in this soil here. And I'm going to go ahead and take off suckers. And I'm going to thin this plant down a little bit because this has gone wild. Now, in Tennessee, we could probably even start more tomato plants. So I could take off these suckers and start more tomato plants. But I'm not going to do that because I don't have the room or the garden space for it. But you can do that. If you have the garden space for it and you had some tomato plants that fail, there's another sucker. You can go ahead and do that. You can put these suckers in a little bit of water and they will grow roots, and then you put them in the ground. It's that simple. Taking off the suckers, the little suckers in between. And this tomato plant has so much going on. I'm going to go ahead and take some of these bottom leaves down that don't have any growth on them, any tomatoes on them, just to thin it out a little bit. This is a cherry tomato plant. We have some coming on, but I wanted to spend the energy on growing these tomato plants and not these new suckers. See how awesome that would be as a new plant? And it looks like I need to get some twine out and shore up these tomato plants as well. I'm also trying to take out stuff that just lets the air flow through these tomato plants so that we can grow, so the air can get through it, so we can make sure that everything has air. They are thicker than I usually grow them. In Oregon, because it rains so much, I really did it thin because we would get a lot of disease really quickly when it rained. So if you live in a rainy, humid place, make sure that you cut off those suckers. And in Oregon, I grew just 2 stems, not one or many stems like this one has on here. I have a lack of garden space this year. Next year I'll have bigger garden space on our land. But because of the lack of garden space, I'm letting it bush out a little more. So there you go, guys. You get the idea now of what I'm doing, just cleaning everything up. I am going to go ahead and get a can of beer because we have some slugs over here doing a lot of damage, and I'm going to put a beer can over here in this container, and that will kill the slugs. The slugs will go for a swim and they'll have a happy death. So we'll see you next time. Thank you for coming along with me today. God bless you guys and have a great and wonderful day. And I'm chasing my dreams. You guys go chase yours. Bye.